friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley Ariana, joined with the special Tom Jensen for an
Oh,
exciting Saturday stream. Live NFL Combine going on behind us. Tom, how are you doing today?
doing okay, Ashley. How about you?
I'm doing a lot better. I was telling people last night I finally streamed. I had some computer issues and I'm not a technologically savvy person, so I'm happy to be back up and running with you guys and get to talk to everyone. Never a dull moment in 49ers land.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk because there's some news around him, but breaking literally as of 30 minutes ago, Deebo's best friend on Instagram. Deebo has some family, I think normally lives with him. This guy is one Barrage. He, during Deebo's initial trade request 2 years ago when he was getting his contract, he was actually the one that put up the video of Deebo in the club. If you remember where that was
Oh,
coming
yeah.
from. So lots of
hmm
Instagram tactics with this guy. Well, he posted um right here. I don't have it saved to the computer because it literally just happened, but it's a picture of Deebo in a private jet saying dog gone or sorry, dog done got traded. He happy as hell with a laughing face.
Okay.
So Debo's not actually traded as of right now, officially, according to everything that we know. Now, Jordan Schultz, NFL insider, reported yesterday that he thought a trade was going to be happening soon. John Lynch was out asked about Deebo and his trade request and said, Deebo means so much to him and to the organization. They love Deebo. It's going to be really hard to let someone that they love go like that, but that they're going to fulfill his request and give him a fresh start. Uh, Kind of hard to say, oh, it's all love and we're best friends. And it's like, okay, well, why did he request to leave? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I thought so. I think maybe any minute now. I don't know if this guy is trolling 49ers, reporters, or if maybe Debo is on a private jet to go sign a contract and the news will get announced soon. But it is Deebo Samuel in a sweatsuit on a private jet, and the guy says that he's already been traded. So,
Okay. Okay. Well,
oh,
Papa J, Niner Gang. Hi, guys.
hi guys.
Matthew Berry of NBC Sports is saying that it'll happen within a couple of days, if not sooner. So a lot of people are expecting this to go down. And apparently, Washington is the team that's in the lead, and they've offered a fifth round pick. At least in this case, I looked it up. Washington has the ninth pick in the fifth round. And so that would be 147 overall. So it's almost a fourth. And that could fit into what the Niners are hoping that that's the best they can get. So 147 overall for Deebo wouldn't surprise me at all. The problem with that is that then the Niners, if they trade him, you have to take the full cap hit, $31 million in dead cap. Bang. And so that really limits what they can do in free agency. Even if they sign Brock for like 14, they would only have $15 million left in the cap to spend inside, outside, everything. And so their cap
Well, because
situation
it's
would
not
become
post June 1st.
dire. So that's a problem.
And if they cut him, they would do it post June 1st and they would save some of that money, right?
A little, but not a lot. They would still take the cap hit. It's just that it could be broken up into multiple years if they do it that way. So it wouldn't be as bad this year. But it might be that ownership in their austerity program of wanting the Niners to save money and spend less, this is a way they can do it. Is that Deebo is due to receive a roster bonus of $15 million on March 22nd. They don't want to spend that money, especially if Deebo is not going to play for them. So I think that's the deadline. If Deebo is dealt, it's before then, and it sounds like it's going to happen very soon. And so, from the ownership perspective, they save $15 million. They don't care about the cap hit. They like that the cap hit reduces what Lynch and Shanahan can spend.
That is extremely frustrating that they
Yeah.
just extended him. I think it was in September of last offseason,
Yep.
so not even a year ago. And now they're going to take a huge cap hit. Like, I guess it's better just to get him the way they're thinking. He's a malcontent. He wants to be off the team. He's made that clear. Now he's posting on social media about it. God, what an I hate to bring it to this, but an intention whore. It's like the news has been that Brandon Aiyuk, there's some people calling for him, and 2 hours goes by, and so him and his friends are already making social media posts trying to get the attention back on Deebo. Just slightly frustrating. I think maybe there's some addition by subtraction that will go on within this offense, getting
Yeah,
Kyle to be more creative and not using Deebo as a clutch, or as a crutch, not using Deebo just because you're trying to, make him happy, because if he doesn't get a certain amount of targets, he's gonna be talking about it on his podcast. So I can see some positives. If they could get a fourth round pick from Washington, as you said, that would
yeah. Well,
be,
it better than nothing. You know, a very
better than
early
nothing.
fifth rounder.
Better than
It's
getting him.
technically it's not a fourth, but it's a very early fifth. So that's probably the best they could hope for, and you just move on. But I agree with you that addition by subtraction would definitely be going on, because even when the team succeeds but Debo doesn't, he whines, and then when the team fails but he succeeds, he's jumping up and down. So it's just, dude, you're only about you. Goodbye. And I think the Niners need to cleanse themselves of that diva poison and just say, okay, that's enough. Move on.
Big Mig kind of asked about this, and I felt like you clarified. The 49ers, either way, cutting or trading him, we're going to eat a large sum of money in dead cap hit for Deebo Samuel. This way, at least they get, some draft capital in return versus just cutting him. But they were kind of in a lose-lose situation after that extension. Niner Gang says, should have been traded last year. I think he should have been traded before the initial contract extension. But yeah, I think the way that they structured his deal in September kind of screwed them if they wanted to move off of him no matter what. So
Yeah. Yeah. And based on what the ownership wants to see happen, which is reduced cash outlays and a reduced overall roster, this is something they want. This is something they've authored more than anything else.
now, surprisingly, because the deal was done even more recently than Deebo Samuel's deal, another wide receiver that is on the trading block, Ian Rappaport. I put, that it was going to be breaking news. Ian Rappaport confirmed that the 49ers are open to trading both, not only Deebo Samuel, who obviously requested a trade, but also Brandon Aiyuk, who was just given a brand new contract only a couple, only this last offseason. Obviously wasn't able to be on the field after his injury. I think he was never going to live up to the deal that they gave him just based on this system and how many targets he was given.
Right.
I wasn't making a comment on his ability, but more just opportunity. But now
Yeah.
I think there's the question of not only opportunity in the system, but also ability, because he's coming back from such a major injury. But ironically, when we talk about how horrible the contracts are and how much money the 49ers have to eat in order to move off of these guys, Brandon Ayuk's deal, they only have a additional $8 million in a dead cap hit that they would have to eat
Yeah.
in 2025 to then get off of like $100,000 in the future if they were able to have a team trade for him, which is kind of crazy when it comes to, all these deals. It feels like a win for the 49ers. It's weird that his contract was set up that way.
Yeah. Well,
But
the contract was structured so that he received a lot of upfront cash. He got a huge upfront cash payment last year,
20 something, right?
and
Right
he's
away
due another one this year. And
in
so,
April, right?
yeah. So we'll see if that's what happens or goes down. But I think it's possible that Ayuk is also traded. And as you point out, it's 7.2 million cap hit if they trade him. So I think that they still have enough cap room even after Deebo to do that. But it means that they don't do anything in free agency.
Now, it's the way that this would work. Oh, is Deebo Samuel officially traded?
Yeah, they said that
That
in the chat. Bobby has that Deebo to Washington for a fifth round pick. And so which one is it? Is it 147? Do they indicate?
Adam Schefter just reported less than 10 minutes ago on X or Twitter. The first 2025 offseason NFL trade, San Francisco 49ers have agreed to send standout wide receiver Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders in exchange for a fifth round pick, the one you were just talking about. Sources tell ESPN. Like any trade agreed to now, it cannot be processed until the new league year begins Wednesday, March 12th. So we'll get back to Ayuk in a minute, but I mean, Deebo Samuel is no longer a 49er. There's been so much offseason trade requests going on. This is not Deebo Samuel's first trade request, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I was a little numb to it actually happening. Feels a little surprising. I'm like, oh wow, I'm
It
just
it is
excited
it's
for it.
weird now that Deebo is
Really?
a former Niner. That's hard
Um,
to wrap your head around. But
yeah.
that's the reality, and they got the best pick they could. The ninth pick of the fifth round is a good pick. You weren't
Now,
going to get any better than a fifth rounder, so at least it's a high one. So okay, good.
the only thing that I will say, because once again, I talked about addition with subtraction by
Yeah.
subtraction when it comes to Deebo Samuel, and I do generally feel that way. And this is coming from someone Deebo Samuel was my favorite player for a long time, and I
Uh,
feel like I held on to optimism that he would be not maybe not, if not reach his peak, be closer to his peak for quite some time before finally realizing that he had a lot of wear and tear on his tires. I think that year really aged him, and he's never going to get back up to that 2021 Deebo self.
yeah.
And it took me a while to kind of come to grips with that because, like I said, I thought of Deebo in such high regard. Um, the Washington aspect of it is interesting to me because I think of Adam Peters, who obviously
Right.
worked with the 49ers. When I was at training camp for a day last off season, I saw Adam Peters and Deebo talking. I know other beat reporters have said that they were close. Adam Peters now works with the Washington Commanders, and the only, I guess, red flag I would say is my thought and how I've thought maybe the 49ers feel is like Deebo's no longer motivated. He's not going to be in shape. We're never going to see that peak Deebo again. But Adam Peters is kind of he's betting on Deebo. Like by trading for Deebo, he's
Well,
kind of saying, I think that Deebo can be good again. And it's more the 49ers can't motivate him. They can't get the best out of him, but I'm going to give up assets to go get him. So
mm,
who do you think is gonna be right in that? Is Deebo,
I
never gonna
think
be
it'll be a
Deebo?
mix. It
Okay.
usually falls in between the two. And keep in mind that Peters isn't just betting on Deebo, he's betting on Cliff Kingsbury and he's betting on Jaden Daniels. So he's thinking that having this offense with Deebo, with that level of a quarterback, Deebo will elevate. And we'll see. No, I think that Deebo will be inconsistent. He'll have some games where he'll do well for Washington, and other games where he'll disappear. I think that's the reasonable expectation.
I mean, we've seen Deebo take over games, and when
Yeah,
he's motivated, when he's healthy, when he's in shape. I mean, that Philadelphia game, even going back to the year before that, the Bears game, like there are standout games. The Cowboys game in the playoffs. There are games where Deebo calls his shot. He feels like he shows up and he's ready to play and he
yeah.
can really go to war for a team and put the team on his back and he will like if you lose it is with Deebo going down swinging type of thing. We've seen Chris McCaffrey behave similarly as well. Um we just saw less and less of that Deebo and I don't know if it was because Deebo wasn't inspired, or a lot of me thought that Deebo just didn't have that ability in him anymore. We saw him in multiple games. He was getting, tackled and immediately pushed back and stopped, where before he was breaking 4 or 5 tacklers, running an extra 10, 20 yards. And we just didn't see that, not even just last season, but the last couple seasons.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm shocked he's not a 49er anymore, which is hilarious because in the stream before I knew it was official, we were talking about him getting traded.
Yeah, breaking
But
news. Here we are.
yeah, I'm
But
glad
yeah,
we're
with
on that.
Deebo, it's you look at 2021 and say that part of the reason that Deebo fell after that is because he was used so extensively. I mean, think of the physical toll of being a wide back and how Deebo was expected to be just a wide receiver, and he's suddenly deployed as a running back and used in that way. It takes a lot out of you physically. And he had the extra motivation of it being a contract year. And we've seen with Deebo that he's very valued in his mind, that he's motivated by the money. And so when you have that contract year, you get peak Deebo. After he signed a deal, you don't get peak Deebo. And I think that's part of it. Plus the physical breakdown is just that 2021 took a lot out of him.
Yeah.
And then you don't get to the Super Bowl. That's hard. And I think that that's part of the problem. Deebo gave us the best that he had to try to get us to the Super Bowl in that year. And if not for the Jaquiski Tart drop, in my opinion, they would have gone and would have won because they had beat Cincinnati earlier that year. But here we are. And so now Deebo goes to Washington. I think he'll have some moments, but I don't think he'll have consistency.
Oh, wow. So do you think, how funny that, Brandon Aiyuk was on podcast trying to go to Washington, talking about how good Jaden Daniels was going to be. Then Jaden Daniels has, best rookie quarterback performance we've seen in quite some time, if not ever. And because Mahomes wasn't actually a true rookie when he first played. Uh, and now Deebo Samuel gets to go be with him. Ayuk is somewhere like, these guys don't like me. They didn't want to extend me. They drafted out. They give me the contract. They actually finally commit. Then the entire year that I'm supposed to be here and feel wanted, all they talk about is how much they regret signing me. Now it's offseason. They're talking about trading me again. And the guy I need to go play with, my friend gets to go play with. It's fucked up.
Yeah. If I'm Ayuk, I look at that and just shake my head of that should have been me. And that's probably going to be running through his head. And it's part of the reason also why I think you do need to move on from Ayuk is his head really here? Yeah, I don't know about that. So if you want somebody that's motivated, that's not about himself, if you want to set a new team culture, part of the way you fix the culture is the player exits. And in this case, Deebo and Ayuk would help the culture if they left.
Yeah. Wow. Really, really quickly, it said on Ian Rappaport. I'm sorry for I didn't mean to be tuning you out, but says Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders for draft compensation. Deebo's due 21.7 million. Now heads to the Commanders. Will they be eating that salary? No, right?
Yeah, no, they will. They will eat the salary, but we eat the dead cap. You got to split the two apart. So the
Okay.
contract goes to Washington, but the cap hit stays here.
Damn, I'm so Adam Peters. I don't know if he's just, to me, Deebo is not worth 21 million
No, but
at
that's what he's
all.
banking on is that one of the things Washington really needs is a physical wide receiver and a number two receiver. Deebo can be that. Peters has
Seems
seen him
kind
do
of
it, and so he
mostly.
trusts him to do it. Plus, you've got Jaden Daniels. You need to give him more targets. So part of this is Adam Peters saying, I would rather go get Deebo than draft a receiver in this draft. That tells you partially what Peters thinks the receivers in the draft because he's making this move.
Yeah, that's true. Like, to me, I don't know. I made it. If the thing that sucks is, I think that Adam Peters is wrong and that Deebo is not going to live up to the 21 million. But if he's right, then that to me is a huge, detriment on the 49ers for not being able to keep Deebo motivated or in shape or use him correctly. Because I do not think Deebo is worth that. And I'm surprised that not only they gave and Kyle Posey from uh
Niners
49er
Nation.
Nation said that a fifth round pick means that the 49ers helped Deebo pack and made sure he was on time for his flight, which I think is kind of funny. And Papa
Good
J
stuff
said
from Kyle.
only eating 30 million. That has more to do with the guaranteed money versus his year-to-year contract. Is that why?
Yeah, well,
For
Papa, what you have to do is separate the contract and the cap hit. Washington takes the contract, we take the cap hit. So Washington will take on what he's owed, the 21 million. and the Niners will take a $31 million dead cap hit right now.
The thing that sucks is this going to, and we'll get into John Lynch's comments on needing to get cheaper in a second from obviously talked at the combine, but is paying 31 in dead cap hit going to affect the like Drew Dahlman, the 49ers
Yes.
spending, all that? That sucks.
All of that. Like I said earlier, every outside free agent gone. Because now, after they signed Purdy to an extension, they've only got $15 million left to spend, period, on everybody, inside, outside. So you've got Kittle's extension. You've got what are we going to do with Jalen Moore? You've got a few other people that they're going to have to deal with. What happens with Dre Greenlaw? If you trade Ayuk, you still need to have $7.2 million in cap space. So, let's say that they trade Ayuk as well. Now their available cap room is down to $8 million. So yeah, Drew Dahlman. Yeah, as you know, I never thought Drew Dahlman was going to happen anyway. But this also means that everybody they were pursuing in those rumors gone. Zach Bond, but then Philadelphia has made Bond their top priority signing in free agency. So I don't think they were going to get Bond anyway. But ruling out, ending that it's Drew Dahlman is no longer possible is a tough thing to face. But that's where they're at. Your starting center next year, Matt Hennessy.
Tom, this is making me so mad. Like, they're spending money. This to me should have been like an all-in type year if you're not, because like they didn't move on from Kyle and John Lynch. And what I was thinking is they were like, okay, we're going to give you one more year. You have to make the playoffs. You have to show that you deserve it. And now they're like, I can already see the excuses starting next year. Like, well, we had to save on money. We were the highest cash spending team. We had to take a pullback for a year. It's like, and we had to pay all these guys to not be on our team. To answer Papa J's question really quickly, this is what I've gathered from what Tom has said a couple times. They were going to pay $30 million no matter what if they released Deebo. So if they traded him, they were going to pay $30 million and get a 5th round pick. If they cut him, it might not have been exactly 30, but it would have been still a ton of money to move off of him, even post June 1st.
Yeah. The only difference in cutting him is that the cap hit would have been broken up into 2 different years. Now the cap hit is 1 year right now.
They're going to take it all in 2025. Another thing that they might be open to taking in 2025 is the basically $8 million cap hit to move off of Brandon Aiyuk. Diana Rossini was at the combine and reporting along with Jordan Schultz and tons of other reporters that agents and people have been asking around about Brandon Aiyuk. The Pittsburgh Steelers are still interested in Brandon Aiyuk, along with other teams, asking basically what the 49ers would want to trade Aiyuk to the team. And unlike Deebo, who his contract to me was horrible to move off of, Brandon Aiyuk, he actually has a deal where, if the 49ers keep him for the entirety of the extension that they just gave him, it's like $110 million. But if they take a $8 million, basically $8 million pay cut this year, if another team is willing to do it, and I think that's the caveat, I don't know if another team wants to do this, but they can move off of every year after 2025. None of that money will be on the 49ers books. They're wiped of the contract they just gave Brandon Aiyuk. Now, obviously, I think whenever a reporter talks to the 49ers front office next, they need to ask what the hell they're doing, because the fact that they're going to, or at least willing, according to Ian Rappaport and other, insiders, the 49ers, John Lynch himself said this, said he's listening to calls. The fact that they're willing to trade a guy that they just extended shows how, to me, negligent giving him that contract extension was. They were never confident on Brandon Aiyuk. Apparently, the 49ers front office was in the middle of trading him when Kyle Shanahan barged in and said that Ayuk needs to remain a 49er, but then apparently immediately changed his mind. And every report that we've gotten since they've given Ayuk that extension is basically about them regretting it and wanting to move off of Ayuk. Yeah. That was pre-injury. Ayuk gets hurt, so now he's really not able to live up to his contract because he's also just not playing. huge waste of money for obviously last season. You got no return on investment for Ayuk last year. And if they move off of him this year, it'll be not the messed up thing is to me, I mean, it's catastrophic in the way that you just look so incompetent to be in this position. But
Yeah.
actually, it's not completely idiotic to move off of him if you do not believe that one, in this scheme, he's ever going to have the opportunity to live up to that deal. And two, if you believe that this horrible injury, it's not just a normal ACL, it's cartilage, it's PCL, it's his knee is broken in every way that it could be broken. If you believe that it's going to be damn near impossible for Ayuk to ever return to the same level he was at, and there's a team that's willing to trade for him, and you can move off of that deal and kind of just cut your losses from what you've already paid him, it's not completely idiotic to move off of him. I wouldn't
Yeah.
oppose it. I would more just critique what got you in that position. Does that make sense? Like,
Right.
if you traded him, I wouldn't be like, this is terrible. I would just be like, it's crazy that you got yourself here when you never had to be in this position.
Right. It's been mismanaged throughout.
Yeah.
You think about this and you say that, okay, Pittsburgh was willing to trade swap the first round picks last year for Ayuk. If the Niners had done that, that's where they can finally take their offensive tackle. They could have taken him last year with that pick, with that trade. Kyle got in the way of that. And now here we are. And now the Niners say, gee, we need offensive linemen. Duh. If you had just made the Ayuk trade, you'd have your tackle right now. So, that's frustrating.
Kumaran says Ayuk to the Raiders, and something that I found funny, the comment that he put right above this wasn't super chatted, but he said, "Damn, Deebo really got an upgrade." And how the 49ers hate Ayuk that they could potentially send Deebo to the Commanders that Brandon Aiyuk was parading Jaden Daniels around, begging to go there last season. They don't send him there, and then they send him to go fail for the rest of his career at the in Las Vegas with the Raiders. No offense, Raiders. I don't think that's happening.
No, I think
Once again,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
I have a little idea, and I know you're gonna immediately shut it down because it's not realistic. But
Nope.
there was a little voice, and I think you know where I'm going in my head. That's like, okay, Ayuk plus
Stop
Jeff
now.
if that's Crosby in return, it's okay. We can rub our hands. But I think that there's one once again you've talked about in general, Mark Davis and the Raiders not wanting to do the 49ers any favors. And also Ayuk is not worth anything in that deal.
No.
And
It's fun
also
to
John
talk about. It's fun to
he doesn't
hope.
want to spend more money, and
Yeah.
getting Max Crosby is spending more money. So
Yeah. People are still hoping for Crosby, but I just look. Mark Davis refused when even the Niners offered the best offer by far for Khalil Mack, and Mark Davis refused to even look at it. That should tell you everything you need to know about the chances of Mark Davis approving a deal sending Max Crosby to the Niners. It's just not going to happen. People want to say, well, he moved to Vegas. He's no longer in Oakland. Doesn't matter. He's at Davis. Al carried grudges to his grave. It's just Mark Davis isn't going to make a trade with the Niners. It's just not going to happen. So, yeah, I get you saying I to the Raiders, Giant, but yeah, no. That's Mark Davis will never do that. So we'll see. Ayuk has plenty of other options. There's a lot of teams that would want him. Pittsburgh, New England. There's plenty of teams that could use him. The Chargers, the Rams. There's a lot of teams that need receivers that play like that. Jesus asked me in the chat, so who's the big receiver now? They're going to have to draft him. And I would think that the guy that they would look at is Savion Williams from TCU. And he's somebody that they could take at 75. And he's basically the X receiver that's in an Ayuk mold as far as 6'3", and he can separate, and he's got a great contested catch rate. He's somebody that I think they'll look at.
who is that again?
Savion Williams, he's from TCU.
Okay.
A wide receiver in the third.
Okay. And then Niner Gang Tate says Ayuk isn't getting traded now. They won't trade both receivers and take two big cap hits. I tend to agree that it's a lot of money to be throwing away on a team that you're not, for players that aren't going to be performing now. But 31 is a lot of money. If they're already in the mindset that they're kind of just clearing cash this year, maybe the thing to do is kind of do it all in 1 year, get it over with, and then
Right.
restart next year. That's not what fans want to hear because it means you're way less interested in competing and being competitive this year. You're more just trying to get
Exactly.
your book straight. But unfortunately, from the sound of John Lynch talking at the combine and the moves that they're making now, I hate to say it seems like they're more interested in getting their Jed York splash right than they are for competing for a Super Bowl this year, which I agree with you, Niner Gang. Tate is surprising to me, especially because they just missed the playoffs this year. I thought that there was going to be a lot of pressure to perform, but seemingly there's just a lot of pressure to kind of get the money right, not necessarily to get your team back up, which I just like to think that your team being successful and money kind of go hand in hand. We've seen the 49ers don't necessarily think that way, especially based on
Yeah.
how they've talked about, the previous owners and GMs, and so
Right. Just
um
address the question also,
yeah,
it's not a big cap hit for Ayuk is why they could do both. Debo
yeah.
is a $31 million cap hit. Ayuk is 7.2. So it allows them to do both.
Still the now to calm people or because I like to have an optimistic side, the Rams were paying Jared Goff $50 million when they won the Super Bowl. So it's still less money moving off of both Deebo and Ayuk is still less money than the Rams were paying Jared Goff when they won the Super Bowl with Matt Stafford. So it is
Yeah.
possible to compete and to be in contention for a championship while paying this much money to get people off their team. Like I said, with specifically, I'm not talking about Ayuk, specifically Deebo. I think there is benefit to just getting him off your team and being able to utilize the rest of your players without worrying that there's malcontent on your team that's going to be complaining or demanding the ball or whatever. Um, so I think that that's positive. If Ayuk was healthy, I would I would hope that moving off of Devo means more targets for Ayuk and maybe we see his production go up and he could, try to be worth the deal that he was given. He's not only is he not going to play to start the year, he might not be playing in the middle of the year. Ayuk is
Right.
going through a very, very horrendous and tough injury. John Lynch said he obviously got his surgery by one of the best knee doctors in the world, the same doctor that did Nick Bosa's ACL. There's a like milestone where they're going to test if he's kind of on the right trajectory coming up in a couple weeks, according to John Lynch. But even with the timeline that they were given, no setbacks, no accelerations, just the same that timeline, he's not going to be ready until at least the middle of next year. And
Yeah.
being ready, what I mean by that is like ready to be on the field and running, not like IU top speed, top chemistry with Brock Purdy. That's not what I mean. I just mean like he can what they're hoping is he can be like on the field, but he's not going to be his full self. Most people, just with ACLs, Nick Bosa has talked about this. Nick Bosa said it took him a full year after he was like cleared. It took him a full year to actually be able to trust his knee and be able to play effortlessly without thinking about that knee and being able to put weight on it and go all out. And that was just an ACL. With once again with Ayuk, it's cartilage, it's a PCL, ACL, MCL. It is every see, I mean, I just named 3, and I think there's more that I'm missing. Like, it was a
It's a
horrific injury, so
yeah, it's a terrible injury, and it makes it that much harder to come back from when you've got that much cartilage that's gone wrong. Your dad came in,
yeah, he's
so
camping.
cool.
Uh, my
4 mile
dad
hike
said,
in.
"Hi, I'm
Nice.
actually
Love it.
just coming in here to brag, I guess. Got a tent and a bonfire going for my hike in." Okay, well, I had some chocolate and peanut butter, so what about that, Dad? He just found out he got service. Let's get after it. I want to say I love you so much to my dad. If you guys tuned in to my first stream in over a week yesterday, if you know, Tom and I usually we go every week, and I stream more than just that, but I wasn't able to go because my computer was all messed up. My dad was a big help and definitely at least listen to me complain about my laptop struggles the last year. So thank you so much for all the help, Daddy, and thank you for tuning in. If you missed it, I don't know if you are literally just tuning in as you wrote this comment, but Deebo Samuel is now Washington Commander. He is traded, and now we're talking about the rumors that Ayuk could also be traded. But so Just if you're tuning in now, Deebo Samuel no longer a 49er. Crazy work. Hope you didn't buy that jersey. Gotta. He's in that box in that 19 jersey, and everyone was like,
Probably
"Oh,
not.
number." And then now he's
Now he's in Washington.
yeah, once again out of it.
So with Ayuk, we'll see. But yeah, I don't think there's any cash constraint or cap constraint or concerns of dealing him. And
which
Mike
means
Silver has said the Niners are very open to dealing him. Silver has some connections within the team, so I think that's legit. I think that if they get an offer they like, they'll move on. After Deebo got a fifth, what can Ayuk get? Maybe a fourth. Anything higher than that, I would be surprised.
and just to tell everyone what the exact numbers are for trading Brandon Aiyuk, the new team, so a team that would trade for him would get him for 4 years. He's guaranteed 24 million point or 24.8 million in 2025, 27 million in 2026. Those are both guaranteed money. 2027 he has 28 million, 2028 has 30 million. So the 49ers would be able to clear all of that off their desk. That's all the extension they gave him. So once again, I think I it might be the owners meetings the next time that the beat reporters get to talk to the 49ers, whether that's John Lynch or Kyle, but they need to ask them what the hell they were thinking, because it seems like the second they gave him this deal, once again, pre-injury, seems like the second they gave him this deal, the short skate thing happened. I think a lot of people, because all that off season's kind of mushed together, you might in your head be like, oh, the shorts, the thing where he went out and he kicked his shorts off because he was wearing the wrong kind, and seemed like him and Kyle were having a standoff in front of the media last offseason at camp. You might, in your hindsight memory, think, oh, that happened before he got extended, and that's why they extended him to make sure there was no drama. No, that happened after he got extended. So seems like neither of them were smitten to be together. I don't know why they, last minute broke down and figured it out to stay together. But 49ers
So
could
good.
move off of a lot of money, and their dead cap hit would be uh 18.4 million, but it's actually, as Tom said, only 7.2 million dollars lost because a lot of that money has already been paid out to him. So the only
Right.
thing that they'd be taking the cap hit on would be the 7.2. So they can move off of Ayuk. My antennas kind of are, we're weighing the pros and cons. Ayuk, pre-injury, did have wide receiver one ability and talent. Cons, he's not in a system or a scheme that's really going to utilize him and target him enough to even be worth that. And then now cons, major injury. Most people are never the same after this injury. So if the 49ers are weighing that, the opposing team that is trading for him would also have to be weighing for that, and they'd have to be accepting all that. So
Yeah,
I
but if the
think are
cost,
gonna.
but what's the cost to that team if it's a late fourth? Do they really care? That's the thing, is that
Okay.
they aren't looking into all the stuff that the Niners went through. They're just saying, we've given a fourth round pick to the Niners on a flyer that Ayuk might be able to recover. Even if it takes him a year, it's still just a fourth rounder. So given what they're giving up for him, it's not much. That factors into their thinking. Sorry to hear it, Corey.
Oops. Oops. I was almost there. I swear, if you were like a 49ers fan in 2021, you would think that there was never a situation where Deebo would not be a
Yeah,
49er. He was such a quintessential 49er.
he was
I
the
almost said
team
s'mores. Now
that
you guys
year.
are talking about s'mores in the chat. What is going on here? Anyways, Mr.
Camping
Corey
stuff.
also on it saying, can we trade Kyle next?
Yeah.
To me, that would have been the move this offseason, especially if they're not competing for a Super Bowl, which it doesn't feel like they're trying to do, or if they are, it's not their number one priority. But no, apparently Jed York is holding on to Kyle and Lynch and probably going to extend Brock Purdy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And anyways,
Well,
we'll
if
get
I could
into.
quickly to talk to that, Lynch in his comments in Indy kind of did something new, where he talked about his own mortality within the organization. That he talked about, well, Purdy as long as we're here, or as long as we're involved in the team, the organization. I mean, Lynch's comments for the first time said, I'm aware that I'm only here probably for the next 3 years, and that's it.
It was
Because
interesting,
the
right?
extent yeah, because the extensions go through Kyle's extension goes through the 2027 season. So I think that's the reboot, is that if they don't win a ring between now and the 2027 year, I think that's when they're going to let Lynch and Shanahan go and bring in somebody new. And it sounds like Lynch is aware of that.
That's I wonder, do you think that part of that is Lynch would be wanting to walk away, or just he like why do you think he's letting the media know he's aware that they could potentially be moving off of him?
There's a lot of things. And
Obviously just been a lot of talk
yeah,
with how successful Washington was this last year, stuff like that, maybe?
right. Well, and then there's been talk before that there's a possibility they keep Kyle and move on from John. Yeah. I would think the thing they'd want to do is to promote John to team president and hire an outside GM to take over. Because if your issue is contracts and managing the money, if Kyle is making the final personnel decisions, he's the one saying, take care of Deebo and
Yeah.
don't trade Ayuk, keep him
They
at
need
the
to go get a
very
strong
last minute.
GM.
I mean, that's the impact of Kyle being the de facto GM. If that's your issue, replace him as GM. You want somebody to professionally manage the contracts, the money, the cash flow. A GM would do that. Kyle doesn't, because Kyle wants to win. He's just,
Yeah.
I'm the offensive coordinator. I want to keep all my weapons. That's what Kyle's about. And Kyle's about running it back every year. And eventually the Niners are saying, no, you just went 6-11. We just spent all of this cash on an extension for McCaffrey and Ayuk and Trent. We spent a fortune last year. Now we're not going to do that. And I think part of that is they're looking at their books because they're considering selling 10% of the team. And so they're looking at the books hard, and that's leading them to this conclusion. We can't keep spending this much money, especially in
Yeah.
cash outlays. And that's why they're doing this. Why was Deebo dealt now? Because they don't want to spend the $15 million roster bonus on him. It's about the cash outlay for them. For the fans, it's about cap hit only. For the owners, it's about cash outlay only,
Yeah.
really.
And they
And
have
so they
a
want to make sure the cash stops. No more of this freewheel spending bit. We're not going to do that.
You mentioned this earlier, but with Brandon Aiyuk, there is, I think, in April, a bonus that he
Yeah.
would be getting if he's still on the team, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that becomes a deadline for him if they want to move Ayuk off the books too, is that he would need to be moved before the draft. But then that makes sense because you would want to get a draft pick for Ayuk anyway.
Yeah. Now, really quickly, because I wasn't able to talk to you after John Lynch did talk. Were you surprised by when he was asked about Brock Purdy? It was the first question Matt Mayoko asked about it. He said that Brock Purdy's camp and the 49ers front office are in contract, talks. They both are motivated to get a deal done, but he did reference there being no guarantees that a deal gets done. And then small group interview, he kind of reiterated that and said, thankfully because of the NFL's CBA or whatever, which is just that Brock Purdy's under contract for this other year. He was saying, even if a deal doesn't get done, he's still going to be with our team.
Right.
And I felt like he hadn't really referenced that yet in the multiple times that he's been asked over the last, they've been talking about extending Brock Purdy for 2 years. And it's not until, just now that we've finally heard him. Obviously, us, literally the two of us and other content creators have talked about this. I mean, like, hey, he still's under contract for one more year. Let that play out. It seemingly has felt like the 49ers were never going to let that happen. They wanted to lock a deal up. And he was obviously saying that that is still the intention, but it was interesting for him. You're talking about the certain things that he's like recognizing. It was interesting to me that he recognized publicly to the media, say, if there's not a compromise that works for both of us, we can move on from Rock and we'll be fine. What'd you think about that?
Yeah. I think that he's introducing that just as leverage in the contract talks. I
Okay.
don't think it's something that they're
Part of the
necessarily going to commit to,
negotiation.
because again, ownership is calling the shots for this offseason. And I think that ownership wants Brock Purdy locked up because they want him as the face of the franchise to market. So I expect that a deal will get done, but at the same time, I think that they're going to be waiting for the market to calibrate first. And it helps that the Rams came to a deal with Stafford. That's a data point they can use in the contract talks to determine how much is fair market value for Brock right now. I think that part of that's going to be based on what the Rams give Stafford.
Yeah. Do you think that, and Julie asked in the comments, asked this earlier, do you think that Brock will take a team-friendly deal? Or do you pay any credence to the rumors that, because it feels like maybe there's some good cop, bad cop. We've heard
Yeah.
reports from Diana Rossini that Brock Purdy is more than willing to take a team-friendly deal. But then we've also heard that apparently Brock Purdy's agent is really trying to make a name for himself, and he wants to make sure that Brock Purdy gets at least what Dak got, if not more. Obviously, we just saw Matthew Stafford got a contract extension, yesterday. So maybe they wanted some deals to start going through to ballpark where Brock was going to be. But is that some, we talked about John Lynch negotiating for the 49ers. Is the whole team friendly deal a little bit of negotiation to try to get fans on his side by Brock Purdy? Or do you think that Brock Purdy maybe
Partially.
will take a deal that's a lot smaller?
Yeah, I think that they're starting to negotiate through the media.
Yeah.
And,
Something that they
Brock's,
never do, right, Tom?
yeah, right. So, yeah, his agent came through the media, like a month ago of saying that, no, this has to be over 60. And people were parroting that. Lombardi had his estimation of what it would be, and it was like 61 something. I still hold to what I've said to you for over a year now. 5 years, 285 million. That's 57 a year. And the reason you go under 60 is because the pressure and the scrutiny is less. That if you hit 60, you get past a perceptual barrier where people are going to hold his feet to the fire if he doesn't deliver. If you're Mangin, his agent, I think you need to build some room under 60 to at least lighten that pressure some. It's one of those 999 mindsets of, markets will do that just because perceptually it seems a lot less than 10.29. And I think that's what will happen with Brock, is that for his own sake, his agent should recognize that it shouldn't go over 60. And if the contract for Stafford comes in where he was asking, which is basically 2 years, 100 million is what he was asking the Raiders for. So if Stafford gets 50 or less, Brock can't really ask for 60 or more. And so I think that that's going to be where the eventual compromise point will be, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 53 to 57, 58, somewhere in there. But if the Niners want less of an outlay in the signing bonus because they're so consumed with how much cash they send out, then that could mean a bigger deal because it wouldn't have as much cash up front.
It's so interesting to think what the 49ers are doing. It's not the strategy that I thought that they were gonna take this offseason. So I feel like I've been
Neither.
a
It
little confused.
I'm taken back because it's so anti-competitive, and yet you look at this
Yeah.
team and you say,
You've
this
got
team
you
can still at least get in the playoffs, and then it's a question of who's hot, who's playing well, who's healthy. But it seems to me that, and this happened a few years ago, where Denise basically said, we've spent a ton of money and
yeah.
now we want to scale back. This is another one. They go through these cycles where they do that, where they review their spending and they say, we need to cut back how much we're spending on the Niners this year. And they just categorically say less now. And this is the exact same thing all over again. Part of that is, looking into selling the 10% of the stake of the team or whatever chunk they're willing to give. I don't think that's about a cash crunch. I think it's about recovering their losses that they spent over budget for so many years as one of the most expensive rosters in the league. And they spent a ton of money on the new video board at Levi's so that they could get the Super Bowl and the World Cup. And so I think that the money that they're looking to generate from a sale of a percentage of the team is to cover that. It's not about generating new cash. It's about recalibrating to what they expected their expenditures to be. It's
Yeah.
them paying themselves back for spending too much on the Niners roster over the last 5 years and spending on the video board at Levi's. It's
Which,
reimbursing themselves more than anything else.
yeah, which to me, I will say sucks. Like, I don't, I don't think that there's any reason that the company that's making billions of dollars needs to be saving more cash. Like, I can see if Jed York was critical, like they gave big money to Javon Hargrave, and that to me was like not a smart decision because he didn't turn out as
Yeah.
a player. But I'm not necessarily anti spending money. It's just like make sure the guys that you're going out are getting are going to perform and add to your roster, and you can go compete for a Super Bowl. But when it comes to like spending money and being all in, like Eddie DeBarlo was paying not only the best players to be on the field, but the second best players to sit on the bench. Like the whole reason the salary
Yeah.
cap exists is because they were spending so much money. So it's kind of
Well,
like,
it's different goals though. Eddie
yeah,
was about, I don't care about the money. I care about the trophies. I
winning.
care about the rings only. And so therefore you get the comment from Parag of they're the lemonade stand. Yeah. And that lemonade stand has 5 Lombardi trophies and you've got 0. Why? Because you're not willing to spend. Yeah. What is Eddie's summit? What's Eddie's mountaintop? Championships. What's Denise's mountaintop? Financial success. And that explains the last 30 years.
And that sucks when you're a 49ers fan.
As a Niner fan, yeah, because you get spoiled by Eddie D. I mean, it's my time, I've Niner fan since 1970. I go back to the Paleozoic era. So I remember when the Niners ownership was cheap pre-Walsh, pre-DeBartolo. I remember all the things that they've gone through. Where, yeah, the Joe Thomas years, which were disastrous. You had coaches that make Tom Sula look like Vince Lombardi. Guys that
Yeah.
went 2-9, 2-10. Fred McCulley, or Pete McCulley, Fred whoever. Just disastrous hires. And so then Eddie DeBartolo comes along and he says, okay, I'm willing to spend any money possible to win a ring, and I'm going to hire Bill Walsh, and I'm going to go get all these players. And as a fan, you can't ask for anything more than that. That's your dream. And you have that for over a decade, and they win 5 rings, and they should have won more, really. It's just injuries to Steve Young, or the Anthony Carter game against Minnesota, Roger Craig's fumble against the Giants in the NFC Championship. There's a lot of things you can point to where, had those things gone differently, they've got 2-3 more rings. That's how incredible Eddie DeBartolo was. But now his sister takes over. She's about financial championships. And that's why we're where we are. And that's why we're getting this recalibration, because they don't want to spend this level of money, and they don't want to give up a stake in the team. The NFL revenues are going through the roof. They want to keep what they've got, but they can't, because the cost of running an NFL team is so high now that you have to have an access to new capital. So that's why they're doing this. But yeah, as a Niner fan, it really sucks that you go from Eddie to Denise, and it's a steep drop.
If the 49ers are interested in recalibrating their entire team and cash flow, I know part of there, to me, there's 2 takeaways. One is something, and someone said Lombardi is Purdy's agent, and I'm sure the narrative he would spin, and I'm not necessarily saying it's incorrect, is they're going to pay Brock Purdy, and their new goal is kind of to build around him. But you could also have the takeaway with John Lynch saying there's no guarantees. Tim Kawakami just put out a report about 2 hours ago saying who knows when it comes to paying Brock Purdy, if his side comes in way higher, that the 49ers are not going to meet him there, which is, to me, is a big tonal switch
It is.
from just a couple weeks ago, when there was basically no doubt that they were going to pay Brock Purdy, when it came from what Jed York was saying, what Kyle and John Lynch were saying, even when Brock Purdy was asked about it in his post game, press conference to end the year. It seemingly felt like from all sides it was guaranteed there was going to be a deal done with Purdy. Is there a possibility that maybe they're completely rebuilding and they are more open to moving off from Purdy than we initially thought? Or at least maybe not moving off, but making him play out on this year and not, it doesn't, I mean, they're moving off of these guys that they have in these big contracts. Feels like maybe they're open to having this year play out, and then if they have to rebuild after, rebuilding after. Because they don't, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like they're going all in to make sure that Purdy has an excellent year or that Kyle has an excellent year this year.
Yeah, well, that's the optimist in you hoping that they do that.
Yeah.
So, from the York's perspective, you're connecting the money and the field. I don't think the Yorks are connecting them. I just think that they're deciding across the board, we've spent way too much money and we're going to spend less now.
Yeah.
It's an austerity move for a year.
Everything is all about themselves and the
Yeah,
cash.
it's only about the money. It's not about the field. So I don't think they've changed anything financially or philosophically. And therefore, I think that in the end, it's going to come down to the Yorks want their face of the franchise. They want that to be Brock, and they'll sign him. So in the end, in a push pull tug of war, they'll end up giving Brock more than perhaps they want. But because Stafford's money will come in as a data point, that can help them frame the discussions of saying that it needs to be within this range. And so even if they pay the high end of that range, I think the Yorks will still be willing to do that. And Brock's agent will try to get outside of that range, and I don't think he'll succeed. The Yorks will say, look, we're willing to pay you, and we'll pay you more than Stafford, and we want Brock to be the central figure in this team going forward, but we are not spending $60 million on Brock. No.
Hmm. What a weird shift for the 49ers in this offseason.
Yeah.
Moving on from Brock Purdy, obviously the NFL Combine has happened, and we heard lots of talks of about the players that are on the 49ers and now no longer on the 49ers as of today. But obviously there was also draft prospects there, and a lot of guys who have met with the 49ers and the John Lynch showed some interest in. Who, if you had to uh give the fans who are watching us now some players to maybe keep your eye out for. I know you recently, I think it was earlier this morning, it got put out on Fan Nation. If you guys don't follow Tom Jensen on Twitter, it's Niners Cast. Make sure to go follow him there. Put out an article on different players that the 49ers have met with. Who do you think that pick 11 is going to be? Or is there a couple guys that you were surprised that the 49ers met with or not surprised maybe?
No, I think that they're doing their due diligence. You get 45 formal interview visits at the combine, and then you have 30 visits after that. The 30 visits are the most important. That's when they come to Santa Clara and work out and talk to everybody and talk to the coaches. But you start the conversation at Indy with these interviews. So we have to say, all right, so where are they looking? One of the keys in looking at the visits, and Steph Sanchez does such a great job of
Yeah.
tracking that. Always follow that. It's gold. Who they've met with, and what form that took. Was it a formal interview? Was it just a meeting? What have you? For the formal interviews, the thing that I like to look at is what position where. So who are they talking to? Who do they like? So one of the players they like is Oladejo, the converted linebacker edge from UCLA. Where does he go? 99. Okay. Is that the only edge they're going to look at? If so, they would pass on edge at 11. And so there's these pieces. You put this jigsaw puzzle together of who do they meet with and where would that person go, and you can start to piece together what the draft plan could be. Now, it may be that they look at a number of different positions, and I think they will. At 11, I think they'll look at defensive end, defensive tackle, tight end, possibly offensive line, running back, wide receiver, DB, safety. A lot of different positions. What John Lynch said was, we want to get a difference maker. And to me, that would eliminate any offensive lineman because there's no left tackle in this draft in the first round. The only left tackle is Simmons from Ohio State, and he's got the patellar tendon injury. I don't think they're
Not
going
good.
to draft
Yeah.
him.
Don't
They're
take
not
that.
going to do that. The other
I
guys are
same
guards
injury
or right tackles.
is
I'm
that the
sorry.
same
Go ahead,
injury?
Ashley.
Is that the same injury Drake Jackson
Yeah,
dealt with? And
and Weston Richburg, and it ended Richburg's career, and it looks like it's going to end Drake's. So I
got it.
don't think that they're going to take Simmons, but they did meet with him. But they met with every offensive lineman that, in theory, could play tackle that's in the first round. So I think that's just a due diligence move. But apparently, one of the interviews that went really well was with Will Campbell from LSU. He's the top rated lineman in the draft, and he's known for having an exceptional football IQ. And I think that's
Okay.
why the conversation went so well, is he really knows his football. And then that's part of it. But will he be there at 11? Probably not. He could go as early as 4 and probably as late as 9. I don't think he'll last to 11. But if he does, that's somebody they'll look at. And I think
That'd
the
be
two
great.
linemen they'll look at will be Will Campbell and Armand Membu. Those are the two guys they could pick if they go offensive line. I don't think they will, though.
And that's the guy that you said the Cowboys took him off the board altogether, right? Because they don't believe that
Yeah,
he'll be
Shamar Stewart, they thought that he tested so well that he'll go top 10. And right now in the mock that I'm working on now, I've got him going to the Jets because I think that Aaron Glenn will look at him and say, I can turn him into an impact defensive end.
okay.
And Glenn, with the defensive background, I think that he would want to tinker with Stewart. That's where I think he'll end up going. But Stewart could fall to 10. The other guy that tested so well was James Pierce from Tennessee. But apparently the character concerns on him are through the roof. He has the worst character flag of anybody in the draft. There are rumors coming out of Indy that he might not even get picked in the first 2 rounds. I find that hard to believe. I think that he would probably drop to like 32, and then Howie Roseman would say, thank you very much, and take him. But apparently, the character problems with him in terms of his fights with coaches, where they think he's uncoachable and a diva
Ooh,
and has a big ego, and he had problems with authority in both in terms of coaching staff and when he got arrested for reckless driving and resisted arrest
shit.
and gave some attitude. There's a
I didn't
lot of red
know that.
flags on him for character stuff that apparently, according to the rumors in Indy, are going to drop him out of the first round, which is shocking because here's the guy that ran this incredible 40 time.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, he's one of the most physically gifted players in the draft, and he's not going to get taken in the first. But apparently, the character concerns are that big on
Yeah.
him. If they are, then the Niners will pass. So, who are the edges that the Niners could look at 11? Shamar Stewart, if he drops that far, and Michael Williams, the young defensive end from Georgia. Javon Walker, the linebacker edge from Georgia, is another one they could look at. If I had to say which one of those drops, it's probably Walker because the league hasn't figured out where to put him. But it could also be Williams, and I think Michael Williams is somebody they would consider strongly.
The with and are those really quickly because I want to go back. I think it was a training staff guy from the Tennessee um team said that the character concerns were like BS. So when I first heard of it, I thought maybe that was a way to get his draft stock to fall. But is that it's proven that he does have issues?
There's a lot of reporting on it. I don't know which side to agree with or not. It's
Got
impossible to know from here.
it.
What's
More than
going on
just
in
rumor.
Knoxville? We don't know. But there's one school of thought that says he's got a problem with authority, period. He's a diva and he doesn't take
I don't know
coaching well.
how coachable that it like you have to we have to consider we talked about this when we talked about Jalen Carter and the Eagles.
Yeah,
Are the
same
49ers
thing.
the correct team to bring on a guy like that? I'm not very sure.
Right. But Philadelphia was willing, and now Jalen
Yeah,
Carter is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So
yeah. See,
that's the risk you have to take.
those guys
But the other school of thought, quickly, sorry, the other school of thought on Pierce is that the people in Tennessee aren't that good to begin with, and he's just reacting to bad people. That's
okay,
the opposite side of the equation. That's the argument. So it'll come down to what does he do in interviews? Does he sell teams on it? Based on what he said at the podium in Indy, he's exceptionally confident. He said, "I'm coming here to prove things," and that's in character for him as far as what his makeup is. But people can say, does he love football? Will he take to coaching because he needs it? He has to do body work on his upper body and his lower body. He needs to be stronger because he can have problems disengaging and finishing. So he needs to do some work there, and he needs to add to his pass rushing skills. They're a little bit raw right now. They need to be more refined. So if he's going to succeed in the league, he needs to add weight and he needs to add technique. And if teams are questioning whether he's willing to do either one, then that's why he might drop.
got it. And then two other guys that I've obviously just heard their names a lot in relation to not just the 49ers, but just with them moving up everyone's draft boards. And you wrote about them when it comes to the D tackles, Mason Graham and then also Walter Nolan. Uh, both of them didn't perform at the combine. They're going to perform at the pro days. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. Graham has a shoulder injury he's still recovering from. Nolan has some knick-knack injuries that he didn't want to compete. The problem for Graham is that his arms measured really short. He had 32-inch arms, 9 1/8 inch hands, which are small. So, I wouldn't necessarily call him T-Rex, but that hurts his stock to have arms that short.
Okay.
And he might drop. Right now, he's projected to go to Jacksonville at 5, and their biggest need is D tackle. And you can question the measurements all you want. Look at the game tape; he's still getting it done. Now, I think that there can be an over-analysis of some of the measurements at Indy. There are some absolutes. I think they mainly apply to offensive linemen and defensive backs in secondary, not so much everybody else. So, we'll see how it goes for him. But Graham could fall. If he does, I think the Niners would take him at 11. Walter Nolan, he came into Indy, and his approach was off from me anyway. He said, I want to be a versatile player. I want to play inside, outside. That's the last thing the Niners wanted to hear. They want to hear, I'm going to power up so that I can be a pure defensive tackle and a two-way threat as a pass rusher and a run stopper. That's what they want. They want him to add 20 pounds, power up, and be a force inside. And
Okay.
Nolan is saying, no, I want to play inside, outside. And so if that's what you want to be, bye. Yeah, and that's too
Why,
bad because
why is he
I
making
think
that
that Nolan is one of the better players in the draft. But
Yeah.
if that's what he wants to be, that eliminates him from Niner consideration, in my opinion.
Do you know why he's making that decision?
No, he didn't say, but he was all fired up about it. He thinks that it markets him, but from a Niner perspective,
Takes him
that's
out
an
off the
instant
board.
turnoff for them because
Yeah.
their question would be, and Grant has pointed this out, so have some others. He doesn't have the weight to handle being in the wide 9 where he's got the gap responsibility. He has to hold his gap. If he's still playing at 293 because he wants to play inside outside, he can't hold the gap, and he would not be a player that they could play on base downs. You're not going to draft a designated pass rusher with the 11th pick, so he'd be gone.
Yeah. Really quickly, I like this. Complacency is poison, and it seems we've been poisoned when talking about the 49ers. I agree with that. That was a poetic way to say it, but I had to bring that one up.
Well
Do
said,
you think
Julie.
that
Agree.
Graham will be long gone by 11? You agree with that?
Probably, but because he has the 32 arms, that's going to be an issue. It'll come down to how well does he perform at his pro day at Michigan, and if
Gotcha.
he tests well, then all of those issues will be gone. They'll just say that, well, he may have short arms, but he still gets it done. And so it's all going to be on his pro day. If he does well, then he'll go to Jacksonville at 5. If he doesn't, then it's possible that he could drop to 11 and the Niners would take him there.
Okay. And then a guy that you wrote and everyone, I really encourage that you to check out Tom's article. He writes down, he maps it out in a way that I feel like was really digestible for me. But you talked about ascending players, and one of them you said in the future, the 49ers drill short shuffle, he ran a very quick one. Do you wanna talk about him a little bit? I found that interesting because
Yeah.
I was looking at
Donovan
players like
Ezeraku. Yeah,
yeah,
he's an edge from Boston College, and he did exceptionally well in the short shuttle. And I call that the future 49er drill because 4 of the players they drafted last year did really well in their position groups in that drill. And the Niners
for
historically
them.
have drafted offensive linemen based on that drill. So
Got it.
that's the drill for them. And
That's what they care about.
yeah, him running 419 as an edge is crazy. Is by comparison, you look at it and say, okay, Ricky Pearsall last year ran 405. Ezeraku as an edge ran
Wide
419.
receivers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So I think that given how much importance the Niners place on that specific drill, Ezeraku is somebody that's now on their radar. The problem is that he's late first, early second. How do you get to him? They would need to trade up from 43. But now that they have a 5th rounder, maybe they'll be more willing to deal some of their
Combine some
picks
of
in
their
the
assets.
3rd and the 4th. I don't know. We'll see. But
Okay.
as Rocco is somebody that just based on that test alone, I'm sure that the Niners will say, "Whoa, look at that." Doesn't
Maybe
mean they'll take him, but it means that he's somebody they have to look at.
I have a question. I don't know if you have an answer to this, but it was something I was thinking when John Lynch was talking about Christian McCaffrey. There's been so many reports that McCaffrey's 100% healthy and he's ready to
Yeah,
go. And so Jennifer Lee Chan was kind of like, do you anticipate that Christian McCaffrey is going to be fully ready to start the offseason program? He's going to be there for the whole thing. And John Lynch, like, really halted that question and basically said he hopes he's going to be a part of it or a part of some of the off-season programming. He won't be there to start. And they have to make sure to pull Christian McCaffrey back because he'll, push himself when he's not ready to go.
yeah,
And then when we're talking about all the money that they're spending, if they were to put a second round tender on Jordan Mason, they'd be paying a lot for him. While
5.
also, I mean, they can't move off of Chris McCaffrey. All his money's guaranteed. So I am questioning if they're really going to pay both McCaffrey and Mason. But if McCaffrey can't go and they move off of Mason, because another team will get him if they don't put a second round tender on him, he'll be somewhere else. Do you think that they're going to be drafting a running back?
Guaranteed.
And what?
Guaranteed. They will be
Yeah,
this is a loaded running back class. Kyle is you know,
yeah, yeah.
rubbing
He's
his hands
expecting.
together. Can't wait. Yeah, it's this running back class. They're probably going to have to let Mason go because the cap situation is such that they can't keep him.
Yeah,
If you've only got $15 million left after getting rid of Deebo, are you going to spend 5 of the 15 on Jordan Mason? Probably not. So
this
they could be letting him go, and I think that it's a lock that Kyle will take a running back. It's just a question of where. I think the back that he would want most isn't Ashton Genty at 11. It would be Travion Henderson from Ohio State, but he's in the 20s in the first round. How do you do that? You'd have to trade down for him. Everybody that wants to trade down wants to then use that pick to get an offensive lineman. Kyle would use it to get Travion Henderson. So you have to always adjust for the Kyle factor in all of this. I don't Cam Scatterbo, no. No. The answer to replacing Juice is tight end 2. And so that's where they can look at Tyler Warren, Colston
yeah.
Loveland, Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, and Ferguson from Oregon. One of those 5 is probably going to be a Niner. And it's
Okay.
just a question of what do you do? Warren could be, Matt Mayoko's talked up this of Mayoko saying that Warren
Yeah.
is definitely a consideration at 11. He's talked him up for about a month now, really.
Yeah.
And Kyle and John saying that we want a difference maker. That could be Warren. Is you need to resolve your red zone issues. And Tyler Warren, 17 red zone touchdowns in 2 years. He's a monster in the red zone. And as
49ers need help.
Mayoko Right. And as Mayoko pointed out, if you have a tight end 2 system, then you can force a defense to guess and create a mismatch. Either you've got a tight end with a linebacker, or you've got 2 tight ends and they're packing in a nickel defense, and now you can run on them. So with 12 personnel, it creates mismatches that Kyle can then take advantage of in his play scheming. And that's why Warren can have a lot of value, not just in the red zone, but just overall. The other factor is that the red zone right now depends too much on CMC. If you add another red zone weapon, that diversifies your attack and it makes you far less dependent on McCaffrey in order to score in the red zone. So I think that's something that Kyle is definitely going to look at. A lot of people say, no, Tyler Warren. I think that Mayoko is right. He's somebody they're going to consider. Doesn't mean they're going to take him, but he's in the mix. He's one of the
Yeah.
players they're going to look at.
I agree. I just don't think that Matt Mayoko comes up with things out of nothing either.
Yeah.
So I would give an extra eye to guys that he's pointing out. And then I do think the 49ers need like I wouldn't be completely opposed to it. So it's not only there's 2 things. One, there's a need there, so he fills a need. And 2, if Matt Mayoko's saying it, I'm gonna put a little extra
Yeah.
um, you know,
Because he's plugged in.
yeah.
He's not just creating this out of thin air. He's doing this from conversations with people.
Yeah, they need to. Someone said they need to draft him and trade Kittle. I completely disagree. And from
Not with
all
all
of
the
John Lynch's comments when he talked about Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Aiyuk, obviously Deebo before Deebo got traded. Kittle was the only guy that I felt like he gave 100%. Like, I want Kittle to be a lifetime 49er. He's going to be around, not just for the entirety of our careers, but he's going to retire with the 49ers. He was the one that he was most sure about. They don't need to trade Kittle. They're going to extend Kittle, but
Right.
that doesn't mean they don't need a tight end. They need a tight end too. And Kittle is getting older. So even if they give him another 3-year deal, or something, they need a guy as Kittle is on, he's descending, as he's getting a little bit less targets. They're going to need a guy who's able to block. They're going to need a guy who's able to catch targets in the red zone. They need, as Tom said, when we talk about guys that they were, open to moving off of, John Lynch made no commitments to Kyle Juszczyk. So instead of having a fullback, having two tight ends on the field, they've
Right.
been looking for a second tight end on the other side of Kittle in quite some time. They haven't been able to find one in the later rounds. They got Kittle. To me, that was total luck. If they do get, a player that's going to be with the team for 10 years to come, then it's the right choice. So I'm not
Yeah.
completely against that one.
Yeah.
Um,
And just
so
to address the point more, the reason they wouldn't trade Kittle is because the value of Warren is 12 personnel, two tight ends.
yeah,
And think of it as Warren replacing Juszczyk. Instead of having that guy in the backfield, you've got him on the front line and lined up in a condensed formation or however else they want to use him. But Warren is also a weapon, not just as a tight end, but as a back. He had 3 touchdowns this year running in the red zone. So there's a lot of ways you can use him, and Kyle's fond of being able to deploy people in multiple spots so that the defense has to guess what's going on.
yeah. So I definitely am not opposed to Tyler Warren. I understand what this guy is saying. Baldwin Blues lifetime players is outdated thinking. I mean, Kittle has had two of his best years in his entire career the last 2 years. He's kind of had a resurgence under Brock Purdy. I think Jimmy Garoppolo was throwing a lot of those, for lack of a better word, hospital balls. And we saw George Kittle, he just took a huge beating. I think he also lost some weight. His legs got a little bit skinnier. So yeah, he was dealing with back-to-back injuries. And I know Jimmy Garoppolo was his good friend, but I think career longevity wise, moving off of him has been great for Kittle. I do hope he's targeted more in the red zone. He's one of their big body players and he can score. So I hope he's utilized more, especially now that Deebo's not on the team. But I'm also realistic. I know that that Kittle is getting older.
Yeah.
I'm just not opposed to having him on the field and kind of utilizing him as much as you can now and then slowly transitioning to him getting a little less targets, the tight end 2 becoming the tight end 1, him becoming the tight end 2 until he retires.
Right.
So,
And you also take advantage of everything that Kittle has learned that he can then mentor
yeah.
for Warren
And
and
Kittle's gonna
accelerate
be
his
a great
development. Yeah. So I think that that's a possibility. Corey's saying that Colston Loveland is better. He is, but Kyle is thinking now. There is no horizon for Kyle. It's now. And the now tight end is Warren because he's 15 pounds heavier. So you get the better inline blocker.
blocking.
And he's more of a weapon in the red zone, which is what they need. And he can run. Loveland is the better tight end. He's faster. He's younger. He's the future pick. If you want to do that, you can. But for what the reasons that Kyle would take Tyler Warren are based on now. Red zone, inline, weapon. And those are things that Colston Loveland doesn't deliver at the same level. And therefore, Warren over Loveland. But in a vacuum, would I take Loveland over Warren? Yes. Would Kyle? No. And that's the entire point.
It'll be interesting to look at both of those players. I wouldn't be opposed to either of them. And
Sure.
then to end it off kind of here, Julie says that Kittle and Warner are the heartbeat of the team, and I agree offensively and defensively. You might say Nick Bosa is the better player, but I think when it comes to the more communal player, I think that's Warner on defense. He's more in charge, where Bosa is more of an independent contractor. She did mention Warner obviously played through it wasn't even fractured, a fully broken ankle
Yeah.
last year. My takeaway was it was kind of interesting when John Lynch alluded to the fact that now Trent Williams is going to be motivated to play and basically hinted that he wasn't motivated to play because he would have had a drop off in his normal performance, um, because he would have been playing through an ankle. Now, maybe his ankle was horrible. I would believe it. I think he's sprained that ankle like 14 times since he's been on the 49ers
Yeah.
team. Um, I want to say with a clean break, it's more likely that you can come back. He just was playing like he could have had surgery earlier and maybe been back sooner, but Fred Warner chose to play through it, which I give him all respect for. She mentioned he did have a little bit of a dip in play, but that's obviously to be expected since he was playing through that injury. Hopefully, he'll
Yeah.
be fully healthy when it comes to next season. But I commend Fred Warner for playing through that, and definitely hope he coaches up. And then
Yeah. And just that's the definition of a leader. That's somebody
yeah,
that truly has the ear and the heart of the team. To do
absolutely.
that and make that sacrifice was pretty amazing from Fred.
And like
But it's
Fred
also
Warner
something you
knew,
expect of him because that's the kind of player and person he is.
yes. And Fred Warner knew he wasn't going to live up to Fred Warner's standards, but he knew an 80% me is still better than, the backup, where
Yeah.
apparently the indication that John Lynch gave was that Trent Williams didn't want to be there if he couldn't be 100% Trent Williams, which is a bit disappointing. But I do
Well,
consider
it's who they
Trent
are.
Williams and Nick Bosa to be more independent guys that are very focused on their numbers and being the best of the best when it comes to their position groups. When I see Fred Warner, obviously I think he wants to be the number one linebacker, but really, and he talked about this not at the combine, but was it at the Pro Bowl or something? He recently talked this offseason and he said to start his career, his goal was to be the best linebacker ever. And that he's at the point now after having a kid and stuff, like obviously he wants to play his best, but his number one goal is team success. He wants to win a Super Bowl in his career. He thinks to be in the Hall of Fame and the things that he wants, that actually what he needs now more than individual success is team success, and that is his number one priority. And I think you see that when you hear him talk about coaching up players under him, and when
Yeah.
you see that he's playing through injury. So, yeah,
Yeah, and all credit to him for that. That's what you want to hear from the player that's really considered the heart and soul of the team, the leader of the 49ers is Fred Warner. And he's embracing that role and more power to him. And he's right. You know, if you want to make it to the Hall of Fame, the best way that he can do that is to win a ring. Whether he can do that here or not, we'll see. But I commend him for that as his goal. And that does separate him from Trent. Trent is more about, I want to be the best left tackle in history. That's what motivates Trent. So, they're wired differently. I get what Lynch was saying is that Trent only wants to compete when he knows he can be Trent. And so, okay, so be it. But that doesn't really help the team. But that's where we are. And you just have to accept that that's who Trent Williams is. And you're still getting one of the best left tackles of all time, even if you might question the motivations. When he's healthy, he's one of the best players in the league.
agreed. I think that we might end this off here. We've been going for about an hour and a half, but obviously there's a lot more to talk about. Draft coming up. For anyone who hasn't read Tom Jensen's article, NinerCast on Twitter, or if you go to Sports Illustrated Fan Nation under NinerCast, he put it out this morning. Make sure to check out that article. Like I said, he relays it all in a format that I feel like was very easily digestible.
Cool.
And we'll be going live again. Knock on wood, my computer's all working now. I really appreciate Tom for being so flexible with me. I've never really had that issue before, so I appreciate all you guys for being here. I really missed being able to go live. Someone saying my Detroit Pistons are good. Um, but anyways, I appreciate everyone on in the comments. It'll be interesting to see what happens, to see if Ayuk gets a trade, who's going to be the 49ers wide receivers if both Ayuk and Deebo are no longer on the team. We got Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, and who else, Tom?
And Jacob Cowing.
Jacob Cowing? Okay.
We're covered.
Maybe an underrated
Yeah,
to look out for
they'll
in the
have to
draft.
draft some people.
Um, so that'll be interesting to keep our head on a swivel for. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone for joining us. And Tom, if you're open to it, I know this is kind of weird because we did a Saturday one, but I'm down to go on Tuesday.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So we should be back in just a few days.
With everything that's happening with the Niners, we'll have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, lots of
They're always
stuff to talk about.
the
And then
Niners are
after we're
guaranteed
live,
drama.
breaking news happen. So
Yeah.
really appreciate you guys and have a fun and safe weekend. And yeah, Deebo Samuel, no longer 49er. Crazy off season. Lots more to come. We really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. It really helps out. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.